Greetings. This is Caroline Staten with Transition US, and thank you so much for joining our call today. I'll be introducing our presenters shortly, and just wanted to mention a little bit about us, the call, and just what you'll expect from this teleseminar today. The call is sponsored by Transition US, which is the national hub of the Transition Network. And transition activities are now in more than 50 countries around the world. More information can be found at transitionus.org. And our principal aim in providing these events is to give practical support to the leaders of transition initiatives, to those who are considering starting a transition initiative in their locales, and to community leaders who are working on resilience building activities within their communities. So all are most welcome. Our event today is being recorded, and we'll be making a recording, and you'll find that in about 10 days' time on the link that is on our website for this presentation. And we want to offer these teleseminars at no cost, but really do ask that you consider making a contribution to Transition US so that we can continue offering these. And thank you in advance to any of you who are able to support us in this way. And now I'll get right into it. So today's event is how to transition to a just monetary system. And our guests today are Scott Morris of Ithacash and Chong Kee Tan of Baybucks. So I wanted to mention some things about the event. And climate change and extreme economic inequality are two sides of the same coin. And our current debt-based monetary system is the enabler and driver of those two modern-day disasters. If we want to successfully transition to an environmentally sustainable future, we must tackle the transition to an economically sustainable monetary system. And this event today covers some of the essential characteristics of a just and sustainable transition. Our speakers today are Chong Kee Tan, who's been an activist for 20 years, working in areas of Asian democracy, press freedom, censorship, and after coming to the United States in the area of equal rights and sustainability. And after the 2008 financial crisis, he began studying our financial and monetary systems and quickly came to realize that these systems are the root causes of the most pressing problems facing the world today. Consequently, he started Baybucks as a transition San Francisco project in hopes of reversing the rising trends of inequality and making the Bay Area more resilient. And Scott Morris is based in Ithaca, New York, where he has founded a successor program to Ithaca Hours, known as Ithacash. His prior work piloting a volunteerism empowering system in Iowa was featured in the documentary Money and Life, and now he works to spread the good word about the power and potential of complementary currencies. He is the U.S. Fellow of the Amsterdam-based Agency for Community Currencies and hopes to see a robust community practice in the U.S. come to life around these systems in the effort to make the world a better and more resilient place. So both of our guests today come to us from years of experience, and we're going to hear from them their suggestions, again, of making a transition to a just and sustainable monetary system. So first off, we'll hear from Chong Kee, then Scott Morris. So over to you, Chong Kee.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Hi, thanks for having me back on this program again. So what I propose to cover here is the rationale of why we want to do this, and also to go over some ideas of how we can do it, especially offering the model of Baybucks as a reference to see, and I'll go into more of how we manage to do it and what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing it this way. So before I begin, though, I would like to do a quick survey among the listener today to find out where you are on this topic. So I'll be asking you 3 questions, and if you could use your phone to select one of the answers, that would be great. The answers choices are from 1 to 5, 1 being not at all or disagree, and 5 being the maximum. I totally agree. This is what I really think. So the first question is, how important is transitioning to a sustainable economy to you? How important is transitioning to a sustainable economy to you? You choose 1, meaning not important at all, and 5 being the most important thing.
And right now, the answers are coming in. So again, you'll need to enable your keypad for these polls and for question and answer. So currently, this is what we have, Chong Kee, is 3% said it isn't important. 3% chose number 3, so they're right in the middle. 14% chose number 4, so it's quite important. And 53% chose that it's very important to them.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it looks like we are preaching pretty much to the choir today. That's great. So now I want to go to the next question. Given that you think transitioning to a sustainable economy is important or somewhat important to you, how important do you think local currency is within this sustainable economy? A sustainable economy can mean many things, yeah, but it can mean anything, for example, low carbon emission and so on and so forth. But the question I want to know is, how important do you think local currency is within this sustainable economy? 1 being not important at all, 5 being very important.
All right, those are coming in now. And what we have currently is 24% chose number 3, so they're right in the middle. 24% chose number 4, so more important, and 20% number 5, that it's very important.
Right, thank you so much. Let me write that down, 25, and then finally, the very last question is, will you try to create a local currency for your community? Would you or your local transition initiative try to create or launch a program in local currency? Let's say, within the next 6 months. Or even better, just make it indeterminate. Is there something that you're considering, something you would like to do? Will you try to create a local currency for your community? 1 being no, never, and 5 being yes, we will do it very soon.
So there's quite a spread on this one. And again, the discrepancy, if the numbers don't add up, all the percentages, it's because some people didn't press anything on their phone keypads. So we have 6% pressed 1, so never. They don't think they'll be considering it. 17% pressed 2, 13% pressed 3, 10% pressed 4, and 23% pressed 5.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks. So this gives me a good diversity. Great, so I'll be basically trying to convince you guys that it's a good idea to start a local currency for your community, and I'll launch straight into now on why that is so. If you go to slide 3, if you're following along, the slide that says why. The reason is this: our current economic system is environmentally unstable and socially unjust. I think this is, all of us agree to this point. I don't need to say any more on that. What I want to say is that our monetary system is in fact the driver of our economic system. And I suspect I probably don't need to say much more about this, because we all know that our banking, our finances, and that's what causes, is the way they create money in our monetary system, is what causes the need to have ever-increasing debt. That runaway debt is driving our resource exploitation, our need for constant growth, which is what's causing increasing carbon emission and an unsustainable economy. I think we pretty much understand that too. And so the conclusion, if we grant the first two premises, is that we really cannot transition to a new economy, to a sustainable economy, without also transitioning to a new, just, and sustainable monetary system. The two things goes together. If you try to create a lot of good, sustainable economic practice, for example, doing low carbon emission industry, transitioning to a better technology, doing cooperative, doing skill share, doing recycling, and so on, but you do not think about, or you're not aware that it is also necessary to change the kind of money we use, then you're always working an uphill battle, always battling the demands of the monetary system, which controls many decision making. So that makes your transition a lot more difficult than it needs to be. Now, if we go to slide 4, I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And as we know, our money right now is created as debt, usually made by private banks. The thing, though, to remember is this: when you have debt money, when that debt is repaid, the money disappears from within the system. Think, for example, let's say you get a mortgage, and let's say $500,000 mortgage that the bank gave you. So that $500,000 is deposited into the seller of the house, the seller's bank account. So he now has $500 million to spend and so on. But at the same time, the bank will basically register a liability on its book that you have to pay back that amount. What happens when you pay back that amount? So your negative balance cancels out whatever asset the bank is holding on its balance sheet to balance it. Usually it's your mortgage document. And so that money now disappears from the economy. Instead of having a $500,000 floating around, when you give that $500,000 back to the bank, that money is no longer circulating in the economy. Now, the problem with a debt-based money like that is that when you create a mortgage, the bank only creates the principal to the mortgage and not the interest to pay for it. If you have a 30-year mortgage, by the end of your mortgage payment, you have paid 3 times the value of your home. That means if your home is worth, let's say, $100,000, you have not only to pay $100,000 of principal back to the bank, you have to find an additional $200,000 in cash to give to the bank in interest. But the bank does not create that interest portion. That interest portion that you find to pay the bank back comes from the principal debt of other people's mortgages or other people's loans from the bank. And therefore, the bank needs to keep creating more and more debt principal so that the older debt can be, interest on the older debt can be paid. That is the reason why we are seeing an economic system with increasing debt. We need that increasing debt to keep the system afloat. And that is what's causing more and more economic activities to create those debts, leading to more consumption, which leads to more resource extraction, leading to greater burning of fossil fuel, resource depletion, and eventually climate change. So that is the driver. That's what Caroline was talking about. The money we use, the debt money we use, actually is driving climate change. We go on to slide 5. And this is a quote I really love to quote. It is from a guy called Dahl, which is a former VP of Exxon. ExxonMobil, of course, you know, is a huge oil company, and he's one of the senior management within that company. And he says, he's an insider, and he says this: socialism collapsed because it did not allow prices to tell the economic truth. Capitalism may collapse because it does not allow prices to tell the ecological truth. And that's the situation we're in right now. The prices we have does not reflect the damages we do to the environment. It only reflects financial convenience. And if we keep going this way, we'll have a very, very serious problem. Go on to slide 6. A lot of people think that this current monetary system we have is the only thing we have, and sustainable or not sustainable, we can't do anything about it. So one thing I want to point out is that the system we have now is chronically unsustainable. And I'm using data from the IMF. From 1970 to 2010, within this 40 years, the world has witnessed 145 banking crises, 72 sovereign debt crises, and 208 monetary crashes. That means on average, there's more than 10 countries in crisis every year. So we are living in a system, in fact, that's chronically unsustainable and causing a lot of pain. Not only does it cause ecological damage, in fact, it causes a lot of social damage. And this is why, going to slide 7, a very well-known academic in this field, is a monetary trader and long-term academic, and was one of the key architects of the euro currency in Europe. His name is Professor Bernard Later, and one of the things he said is this: in order to face the challenges of the 21st century, we need to rethink and overhaul our entire monetary system. We come up very strongly that unless we overhaul our monetary system, we really cannot truly face the challenges ahead of us. So let's really rethink our monetary system then. If we want to redesign our monetary system, what would be the characteristics that we will want? Here are some of my personal proposal. Go to slide 8, you see it over there. First thing, I want it to be a zero interest currency. If you notice, a lot of the previous critique I had was on how the debt generating interest on your mortgage is what's forcing us to have increasing consumption to support the financial system. So the first thing to do is have a zero interest rate currency so that your debt actually does not generate interest. Now, go into more detail. This is actually a very subtle point. You can't have a complete zero interest regime, but we can have a good part of our money system that does not have interest attached to it. The second characteristic I would like is I would like it not to be like our money not to be created by private banks, but created by the users of the money, and created not to fund housing speculation, but to fund real work. So for example, if you're a small business owner and you need some money to repair your roof, to buy a new machinery, and so on and so forth, you should be able to create the money to do that. So that will be a second thing, the democratization of the creation of money. And to limit it so that it's not used for financial speculation, but to fund real economy, real work. And third, I want that money to be backed by the creator's own productivity and not by asset price. What we have now, through our mortgage debt money creation system, it is always backed by the price of your home, which is a terrible thing because it leads to asset inflation, speculation, boom-bust cycle, and all these horrible subprime mortgages crash. So instead, we should design the money so that it is backed by the user's own productivity. That means if I create $10, I'm willing to put some of my time to back that dollar up, or some of the products I have back that dollar up. So you never have a case where you have the Fed turning on their printing machine, printing billions of dollars every month, and you end up with too much money chasing too few goods, which is, of course, recipe for inflation. So we want it to be backed, all our money that created, not backed so much by gold, but backed by everyone productivity. That way you don't need to hoard gold to make it work. And we also like the money to somehow encode the environment, the externality, so that the money you use reflect the true price of the resource and of the environmental carbon footprint you're having. If there's a way of making that money linked to that, you'll have a much more robust money that will be sustainable, not just socially, economically, but environmentally. And the proviso of all that is, of course, we don't want that money to be used for financial gains. Stock market exchange, and all kinds of financial, especially when you go into derivative trade, option trading, and so on and so forth. That will be something that should not be used with this money. So I'm arguing then for restricting this new money to only the useful work that are connected to real economy and not the financial speculation. Again, there's a lot of objection that someone can have to a proposal like that, and we have a complete monetary system, and we can discuss all of that later too, if you want. So at this point, I want to have a quick pause because I cover a lot of the negative stuff about the money. I want to go into the positive one next. But before that, I want to take maybe one quick question, if anyone has it, on what I've said so far. Any major objection, any query, any things that really you don't understand that you'd like me to go over? Anything?
So press 1 on your keypad. Give Chong Kee sort of a readout. You know, how's this information going down? And if you have any clarifying questions. Chong Kee, I'm not seeing anyone pressing their keypad.
All right, I'll charge ahead then. Now, having told you why it's important to think about creating a local monetary system, I will now share with you a few examples. And I'll focus on just one because Scott will be covering a lot of the other things. So the one I want to focus on in particular is something called a barter exchange, in slide 9. This is a model that was invented, well, I won't say invented, but the most famous example was the one that started in Switzerland in 1934 called VIA. VIA was started as a business-to-business barter exchange because it was started when a group of business owners in Switzerland during the Great Depression getting together and realizing that the reason they're not selling any of their product and they're going bankrupt is not because people suddenly don't need to eat or don't need to wear clothes anymore. Rather, it's because they have no money, so they are just going without. And so they decided that, well, instead of me sitting on all my eggs and then going bad and you sitting on all your shoes and no one's buying them, why don't we agree to just barter so that I get some shoes, you get some food, and we all can get by even though none of us have any money. So this very simple idea caught hold and actually, to a good extent, solved a lot of the problem and hardship faced by the Swiss during the Great Depression. And it basically took hold in Switzerland, and it grew to be a very big barter exchange. They have, I think, in excess of $6 billion annual turnover the last time they published the result. And in fact, this whole model has now become a global phenomenon. There are similar barter exchanges in most parts of the world, many here in the United States. And what we are doing when we implemented Baybucks as a regional currency for the San Francisco Bay Area is that we basically took this barter exchange model, which has demonstrated that it works. That was very important to us. We want a system that has demonstrated working for many decades, so we know that it's proven. But we also saw that it has certain short disadvantages. And one of them was that it was only for B2B, only for local businesses. And so what we did was we took that and we realized that we can easily extend this to work for consumer to do a B2C model, as well as eventually to C2C, so that it can be a community currency as well. And so this is the model that I will be talking a lot more today with you about, and so how you can implement, if you want to implement something similar to us, this is what we did. Now let's look at barter exchange. If we use a barter exchange to implement local currency, does it satisfy the kind of criteria we just mentioned previously? If you go to slide 10, let us compare notes. First thing is, yes, a barter currency can be a zero interest rate currency. Now, there are a lot of commercial barter exchanges around the world and in the United States as well. Most of them do not have a zero interest rate policy, but that's because they are trying to make money. There's no reason why you can't take the barter exchange model and have a zero interest rate currency running. And there are many successful examples of that. And so and Baibak is one of these. So yes, we are running a zero interest rate currency based on the barter exchange model. Second thing, which is actually the defining characteristic of a barter exchange, money within a barter network is created by the user to fund real needs. That's basically how it's set up, how it's designed. So that is part of it. And second, it is also backed by the user's own productivity. You remember that was one of our nice to have criteria. So that one is satisfied as well. And then does it limit the impact to local environment? Yes, it can be made to do so. You can do this by simply limiting the membership in your barter exchange to only local businesses and local residents. That way, as they start using the currency, they will have to buy only from locally sourced and locally produced goods and services. That way, it is starting to respect the limitation of local resources. When it becomes very hard to outsource something to India, to China for manufacturing, but you have to get it from locally, you have to use local resources, local manpower, and so on to make them. Naturally then, this money encodes the limitation of the local environment. And finally, this is also a currency that cannot be used for financial speculation. You know, the stock market will not accept this, and you can't use it to do derivative trade and so on and so forth. It is designed only to be used to fund real economic needs. So as we can see then, a barter exchange a currency that's created based on the barter exchange model satisfy actually all of this criteria that we would like to a local currency to have. So that's a really good news. Now if you go on to the next slide, slide 11, the way we decided to implement this local currency is to learn from the barter exchange and start with also a B2B only. So right now, Baibak is only business to business. We currently have about 300 local businesses using it and trading in Baibak. And we plan to keep growing the number of our business membership until we reach about 2,000. I estimate it will take probably another 2 more years, or possibly 3, because I'm saying that because we noticed our growth rate speeding up, which is a really good thing. So once we hit about 2,000 local business members, that's when we'll open it up for B2C use, so that local residents can get hold of Baibak and use it with local businesses. Now, how would you get hold of it if you're a resident? Well, the first thing is we encourage local residents to be productive members too. So they can offer something as simple as, let's say, guitar lessons, dog walking, grocery shopping, whatever that they feel they can offer. So that would be the best way to participate. That way you get to create money as well based on your own productivity. Second is you could also be employees of a local business, in which case you can receive your employee benefits and welfare program. For example, let's say your company would like to reward best performing employee or would like to give all employees some kind of welfare, company welfare to make you guys more happy, then you can actually receive that in Baibak. And finally, the very last option, because we have retiree, when I talk about our plans, very often I'll have retiree coming up to me and say, look, I'm retired, I really not very mobile, I don't have a lot of skills, but I really want to participate. Can I buy Baibak? And so my answer typically is, as a last option, if you really can't do anything else, yes, we allow you to purchase Baibak with cash, but you need to understand that you can never go back. That means every dollar you put into the local currency will always stay local. There's no way to convert from Bay bucks back into US dollar. Once you're agreeable to that, yes, we'll allow that as well. And finally, once we have 1,000 residents using it, local residents using either as their own productive self or as employee of a local business who is a base member, and we have sorted out the technical difficulties and all that in the software and so on for consumer to use it, we plan to open it up to C2C usage. At that point, we'll most likely not just stay in digital form, but we may even have a paper form, so that is much more easy for local residents to just spend Bay bucks with each other using the paper form. So that's our overall plan of implementation. Okay, now once you have something to do that, what is the characteristic then of the local currency that does this? There's a couple that I'd like to go over. You go to slide 12. The first thing that it gets easier to persuade people to use it, because it is a very kind of small step. A local business can spend, let's say, only 100 Bay bucks a month and stay with that small amount. They can do that, or they can do 10 or 20% of their monthly volume in Bay bucks, and there are one or two businesses actually who do that within our network as well. And so it becomes very easy because each member, each business can decide for themselves how little or how much they want to participate in the local currency money. And the more, and they can once they decide, they can get a toe wet, and then they say, hey, I'm actually experiencing benefits by using this. I'd like to do more. And then when you see more benefit comes in, they can decide to do more. So it's a very gradual, slowly drawing people in as they see the benefit. So it becomes easy to persuade people to use it. It is self-sustaining, which means that the reason is because we have fees to fund the operation of Bay bucks. So we are not a non-profit, which depends then on external grants to keep it going. We actually charge usage fee from among our members. So the more members are using it, the more fees is generated, the more we can actually take on new staff to help recruit additional members to service existing members. So that way, we have a system, a model that's self-sustaining. It pays for itself. It doesn't need external grants and all that to keep it going. And we very consciously make that decision because we have seen some other friends running local currency that requires external grants, and when that external grant dries up, the currency itself collapses. So we don't want to be in that situation. That's why we designed something that's self-sustaining. It is also self-correcting. By that, I mean when the money is created by local user, then you can only create as much money as you need. And so the money supply within Bay bucks actually grows and shrinks based on the total demand of all our members on money. That way, when a lot of people need a lot more money, the money supply automatically grows. When people need less money, it automatically shrinks. That way you have no inflation, you have no deflation, and money supply is always exactly in balance with the need for the money. That's a way better system than having a Fed turning on the printing machine. It is transitional, meaning that businesses can transition slowly into a local monetary economy as much as they want. They can go completely 100% in Bay bucks if they really can survive doing that, and they can do any portion of it. So it's really great for a transitioning project because you actually create this bridge for people to do as much as they want, as much as they can. So there are other things about it too that I won't cover because we're running out of time. So I want to go on to the next point I want to make, which is there are also difficulties in implementing a model like that. The first one, the most important one, is that it is difficult to persuade businesses to join in the very beginning. because you're starting a network and you have 0 members in your network. Even though people can see the value of being a member of this network, but that value really only comes when you have, let's say, at least 100, if not 200 members within there. So when we first started, a very typical response we get when we talk to local business, even those who are, green businesses and card-carrying sustainable businesses, they will say to us, what a wonderful idea. Let me know when you have 100 people in there, or let me know when you have this and this, when you have a contractor in there, when you have a printer in there, and then I will join. And so everyone who's joining is conditioned upon someone else's joining, and at the end, nobody will join. So that is the nut to crack. The way to crack it is also very simple. I won't go a lot into here. If you're interested, contact me, and I'll tell you all about our experience and how we managed to crack this problem. Not a difficult thing to do. A second thing is, in implementation, is a choice to choose between a nonprofit and what we chose, which is to be a co-op. There will be people who think that if you're creating a local currency, you need to be a nonprofit. Would think that, oh, you're creating co-op, even though it's a co-op, it is still a business. I don't want to have anything to do with money which is, created by a business. So that is quite a bit of public education that's needed surrounding that as well. And what we find help is to say that, look, this co-op, eventually everyone who uses it will be a co-op member. We have a co-op that is comprising of the staff in Baybucks. They are naturally the co-op members. Also the members' business. They can also be, we don't have that structure yet, but once we have enough membership, it is very easy then to switch into that model where you have multi-stakeholder, including all your membership will also be part of the co-op. That way anyone who is using the money also have a stake in the ownership of that money. So in this our implementation, I'll say public education is a constant necessity. You have to keep explaining to people because there are a lot of misconceptions surrounding, a lot of misunderstandings surrounding local currency and local money, and you need to really help people understand what you're trying to do. On the other hand, there's a lot of advantages to implementing Baybucks in this way. On slide 14, you see that once the system is up and running, it becomes very easy to grow it because the people latecomers will automatically see the value and they'll just join much more quickly than before. And you actually can add lots of team members without incurring financial risk because we actually can offer 100% commission-based membership within our co-op structure. And so we actually now are becoming a platform for creating living wage jobs. And so I'm really, really happy about that. So finally, okay, I'm looking at the time. It looks like I've spent about already 30 minutes, so I want to end right now. The only thing left for me to say is that there are two kinds of economic system when we think about it. There's one that creates more as they run, creates more and more equity, more and more sustainability, and another kind that as the more it runs, the more inequality it creates. And you can really think about that as two things. One, which is the forces of capitalism, which is driving privatization. And another force now, which a lot of you guys are in, which is creating commons, creating the commons. You can think of the commons as many different kinds. You have the environmental commons, which means our clean air, our clean water, fertile soil, fertile ocean, and so on. These are environmental commons that all humanity share. No one has any a priori claim to it more than anyone else. And then you have our economic common, which means our monetary system that we all use, our legal system, our free market, our banking system, our transportation infrastructure, our communication infrastructure, the internet, and so on. So these are also commons that we all share and use. And finally, we have also the civic commons. That includes things like our law and legal system, our public education system, our public health infrastructure, our fire department, our disaster response system, and so on. So all these are what undergirds our current civilization. And the more we have healthy commons that all of us contribute to making more robust and sustainable, the more we'll end up having equity and sustainable development. Don't try that with privatization, which we're seeing a lot of it now. For example, privatizing school. All that does is reduces social mobility, because the really good school that only the multi-billionaire can afford to go to provides top-notch education and networking connection with other influential and wealthy people, and that sets you up that a poor public school can never ever do. So once you allow more and more privatization of education, you start seeing reduced social mobility. We have privatization of banks, which end up concentrating wealth. You're seeing right now an attack on the internet, trying to privatize the internet, and that's why net neutrality is so important. Right? If we allow too much privatization of the internet, we will suddenly see the death of net neutrality. And not to mention the privatization of the government, which is one of the worst things, because that basically produces oligarchy, which we are seeing right now. So I'll end then by saying creating a local currency is another way of ensuring that our commons, especially our economic commons, become strong and become a supporting bulwark of the work we're trying to do. And I hope I managed to convince you that if you're interested in transitioning to a new economy, you mustn't ever leave out creating a local currency as one key focus of your project. So thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation. Now, before I go, I just want to do a quick survey again, asking you the same 3 questions so that I could tell if what I've said had any impact. Right? So with your indulgence, how important is transitioning to a sustainable economy to you right now? Could you use 1 for not at all and 5 as very important?
And people are putting their hands up. Thank you so much for participating in this. So Chong Kee, I didn't record the other answers, but I think you did. So
yes,
let's see. So we have 3% pressed number 2, 6% number 3, and 51% number 5. And then a number of people did not press any number, but the majority have.
Right. And so next question, how important do you think local currency is in the sustainable economy? 1 for not important at all, and 5 for very important. How important do you think local currency is in the sustainable economy?
All right. I think everything is in. So we have 3% press number 2, 6% number 3, 19% number 4, and 48% number 5, very important.
48%.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And the last question, will you try to create a local currency for your local community?
So press 1 if you don't think that you will, and then 5 if you are planning to or really strongly considering it. So we have 6% press number 1, 6% number 2, 25% number 3, 12% number 4, and 19% are planning or thinking strongly of doing it.
Great, thank you so much. It looks like I persuaded some of you who don't think it's important, but I also seem to have lost some of you who previously were 5. I think 5 previously was 23, and now it's dropped down to 19. So maybe you have more question about that, or maybe what I've said somehow made you felt too daunted. But before we do that, we'd like to give time now to start, and we can come back for more Q&A later on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chong Kee. And as I mentioned, some people weren't able to put their hand up for a number of reasons. So, So let's go to you, Scott, and hear about the great work you're doing in Ithaca, New York.
Thank you all so much, and thank you, Chong, for doing all the heavy lifting there. As our listeners might have gathered so far, this is a really loaded conversation in general. There really is a lot that goes into this, and you can explore any one of these topics for a great amount of time and still not reach a point where you feel like you've learned everything or really have a full grasp on it. And then just to add in all the other complexity, each one of those individual elements is tied to all the others when you're actually trying to implement something like this. So it really is quite a thing to implement and to bring into reality. And so I'm always a big fan of people who are willing to take the plunge, and always happy to provide what level of support we can. And I know Chong does the same thing. So I will start on page 19 of the PDF for those people who are following along. You'll see our logo there along with our link to ithacash.com. I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on Ithacash right now. We can come back to that, and I'm happy to answer more questions. And you'll have our contact information at the very last slide. So feel free to reach out if something grabs you in particular and you want to explore it in more depth. I'm happy to field questions, as I know Chong is as well. But in the meantime, I'm just going to continue on to page 20. What I'd like to do is provide kind of the global perspective to complement the local perspective, because what many people end up thinking after, in taking in some of this information is that, oh, wow, this is really quite something, but I've got to be some sort of, PhD in economics or, have a really great grasp on what's going on before I can take action in this. And, then I'm going to be going out on a limb in my isolated little local instance. And, I don't want to have to deal with all that and go out there alone. And what we're seeing today, which should relieve some of those anxieties, is that we have a really global movement of people who are really interested in seeing these things work at a more functional level and, kind of on a higher order of coherence by, creating different communities of practice between the different factions of people who are engaged in this space, specifically people on the ground like Chong and I as practitioners. Also, the academic community is really starting to take more interest in the kinds of outcomes that can be generated in terms of not only the commercial and financial benefits, but also the social and environmental shifts that we can help people make in kind of an accelerated fashion. So what we had happen in the EU, and this program, Community Currencies in Action, ran through, I believe, June of last year. And if you go to page 21 here, you'll see the partners. There's a number of partners who received funding through the EU Interreg program to run 6 different pilot currencies, which you'll see on page 22. And each with links there, so you can go check these out individually. And each of these projects was monitored and evaluated for real kind of impact, and also kind of given a higher level of governmental support than the bootstrapper would typically find. Now, we are behind the curve here in the U.S. Okay, in the EU, they are really taking a leadership position and starting to invest more in these programs and in developing them as operations and in how to provide the impact measurement. So without dwelling on any of these individual projects, because we can explore each in depth individually, head on to page 23 where you'll see this really wonderful summative report from the CCIA program called Money with a Purpose. And the 4 primary outcomes that they found that these programs and their differing flavors could deliver was the ability to democratize services and improve service delivery. And what they mean is social services for the most part. that they could support the small to mid-sized enterprise economy, which means Main Street businesses, to counter inequality and social exclusion. By using these currencies, we can bring people back into the community fabric and weave a more tightly and more beautifully woven social tapestry, which can actually reduce recidivism and improve overall community health and all kinds of fantastic secondary and tertiary benefits, and then also address environmental impacts. Oftentimes, these currencies are used as incentives for people to shift their behavior from the old world mode of behaving to, kind of the more sustainable future we want to build. That's going to require everyone changing their behaviors in ways that are more efficient. They consume less energy, they produce less waste, etc. On page 24, you can find a really wonderful book called People-Powered Money. This was released at the same time as Money with a Purpose, and if you want a really thorough rundown on what putting these things together and what they can do and all this, this is the go-to resource. It is absolutely, hands down, the best available. You also see the cover for Community Currencies, Opportunities and Challenges for Local Government. Any of you that are considering implementing, I strongly, strongly encourage you to look at this document and start making connections within your local governments as soon as possible. I try to describe the kind of the attack strategy, so to speak, as a pincer attack, one from the bottom up and one from the top down. You've got to go and generate a marketplace of people and create consumer demand and interest, and then at the same time you have to go in from the top down and engage large community stakeholders like the government and other local institutions and get them to become involved in the program, because then it can give it that staying power as well as generate some significant revenue streams. But on page 25, we're really going to see, I like to break it down into colors here. I like using the rainbow analogy to explain how we have kind of different colors or different flavors of these complementary currencies. It's very easy to hear people who are passionate about this and will talk about one kind of system, and there's a lot of people who have a lot of pet subjects, and I'm certainly not trying to implicate Chong here. I know that he is a very balanced practitioner and that he knows all of this stuff, and he has good taste in policy. But there are a number of different strategies that can be deployed. The real question is why? Why do you want this currency? What is the outcome that you are trying to generate? Are you trying to support Main Street businesses? Are you trying to create a richer social fabric where people know that they can go to one another for mutual aid? Are you trying to insulate purchasing power into one geography? These are the kinds of outcomes that will determine which system you want to choose for where you are. So just going from the top here, business to business is the barter industry trade dollar model. This is where Chong is located. And that is a system that abides by what we call mutual credit or zero balance model, which is what underlies a lot of what Chong just talked about. You also have local and regionally dedicated currencies. You may have heard about the Bristol pounds in England. If you haven't, look them up. They're doing a really great job over there, really playing a very significant leadership role there in the city of Bristol. Their mayor accepts his full salary in Bristol pounds, which is quite something. You may have heard of this little thing called the Ithaca Hour. It is a world-famous model. It was based here in Ithaca, New York, where I am today. It ran from 1991 through about 2008, 2009 was when they stopped updating the directory. We could still say the Ithaca Hour, but I'm just going to move right past that. The Banco Palmas there, that's this Brazilian rural currency model, really fantastic. But just to keep going along, we've got time-based systems like time banking. But there's also the SPICE time credits, which are one of the CCIA models. They are different from time banking in what I believe is a very significant way. But again, I don't want to get drawn into the details so much. Social purpose currencies are, I think, my favorite. And if you've seen Money in Life and you remember how I came in it all, it was with this Hero Rewards merit program towards the end, where we gave a currency called the merit to volunteers for doing community service. And then they could take their merit to a local business and they got a hero reward. It was just kind of a currency of gratitude that allowed the business community to connect their excess capacity to the nonprofit sector and them building a better community. So it really it was a triple win scenario. Everybody really loved it. I really look forward to doing this program again as time goes on. But anyhow, that's where that falls. Loyalty, you know, when you're if you look at Bernard Lietier's YouTube video, he typically starts out by asking how many people, you know, use a complementary currency. Very few people raise their hand. How many people have frequent flyer miles? Everybody raises their hands. Well, you're using a complementary currency. Did you know? So this is just a currency system that is designed to keep people coming back to one company or one network or whatever. We all get this. We've got these kinds of cards in our wallet, but we just don't think of them right now as another kind of currency that we're using. But in truth, it is. There's also reputation-based currencies, such as like seller ratings on eBay and Amazon. Expect to see this field really get a lot more interesting in the next 10 years as we start to have, you know, kind of universal ID on the internet kind of stuff where you have a trust rating that it carries across multiple platforms. And then more recently we have the cryptocurrency scene with Bitcoin, Ripple, Ethereum, and all of that. We can talk about that stuff individually later on. So on page 26, I've got just a little thing on the mutual credit system. You've got the time banking scene. Time Banking UK and Our World have partnered. You've got Time Banks USA, the Veer Bank that Chong just spoke about there, which is a really fantastic model, and there has been some really interesting research done on how the Veer Bank itself has played a significant role in the stability of the Swiss economy. Besides, you know, housing a whole bunch of banker funding, they have a backup currency that operates on a counter-cyclical basis, meaning that when the regular economy tanks, they move over into the Veer, and they can still conduct day-to-day business while the regular economy gets back on track. It's just a common sense thing, you know. I mean, once you're in this space from where I'm sitting, it's totally common sense stuff. So page 27, you'll see pictured the Ithaca Hour, the Bristol Pounds, the Brixton Pounds. There was a New York Times article not too long ago that was titled, "Do You Have Change for a Bowie? The Advent of Artisanal Currency." And I thought that was kind of a nice turn of phrase there, you know, where it kind of gives it this hipster effect of, oh, you know, I was into making my own currency before it was cool kind of thing. You know, and with David Bowie's passing, certainly, you know, the Brixton Pound note there featuring his likeness is just that much more special for that area. Now, the one in the bottom right is not as recognizable, but it is a really cool model, and it is from Austria after World War I, and oh geez, I'm blanking on the name right now. What's going on here? Chong, you got, oh, it's the Virgil. It's the Virgil. There we go. So the Virgil is W-O with the 2 dots over it, RGL, but if you just search WORGL currency, you'll find it. This one is particularly interesting because not only do we go to a 0% interest, but you can actually go negative with interest rates. And when you do that, I mean, you may have seen some articles recently about how central banks around the world are starting to go negative with their interest rates, and that's like blowing everybody's minds. They thought that was against the rules, so on and so forth. And people like Chong and I who know this is a totally okay and even desirable thing are just laughing because these, people with PhDs and stuff are freaking out, and we're just like, look at these guys. So what you end up doing with a negative interest rate is providing a circulation incentive. You get people to spend it faster because they know that holding on to it and hoarding it is going to hurt them over the long run. And so you can really accelerate the velocity of the currency, and that's a key metric of success for a local currency, in my opinion, is its velocity, because ultimately that measures its utility in facilitating transactions. So on page 28, you'll see our merit from Ames. Now that was a very time-limited pilot. That was the second pilot of that program we'd run, alongside a couple of others. You got the Torque there. That is a very interesting model if you're looking at reintegrating immigrant communities, running community gardens, and housing. Then I would recommend checking out this model. I like the permacredit on the bottom right. It's still conceptual, but man, look at that note. It is just such a beautiful thing. It's got the public and private key there. This is just like a really beautiful concept. But I'll tell you, the really boring looking coin on the bottom left is probably the best example on this page here, because it was used to motivate kids in the slums in Brazil. They started offering these bus tokens in exchange for pre-sorted bags of trash. And so what had happened there is that in the city of Curitiba, they had the hillsides and the slums were just totally covered in garbage. People are getting sick. It's, disease is spreading and everything. But the roads aren't wide enough to allow the trucks to come in and collect the trash. And the city has no budget to do anything about this, but they do have an underutilized bus system. And so the mayor there, Jamie Lerner, gets this great idea saying, hey, why don't we give people bus tokens? Look, I'm totally paraphrasing the history here. I don't know exactly how it happened. However, let's give these bus tokens to people who bring us the trash. And what they found would happen was that the kids would go and pick the hillside clean of the trash and then get the tokens. The parents would take the tokens and take the bus into the city and get employment. And the system ended up working so well that they recreated the model with like CSA shares for keeping your kid in school, and they end up winning like a high UN Sustainable Development Award for raising the average household income by some 40% compared to neighboring regions. It was really successful. On page 30, you'll see just some examples of cryptocurrencies and tracking it and whatnot. I don't think there's any. This is not up to date. This is totally dated. And then on 30, you'll see just a photo of a whole bunch of these things in one place. So all I'm trying to do is provide a little more context that there is a lot of diversity in action here, and that offers us a lot of options as activists to choose the right model that makes sense for us and our geography. So let's take a look at what we've got on the ground. Page 31, we're looking at a couple maps of the U.S. The one on the top is from Time Banks USA. The one on the bottom is from Our World and Time Banking, UK. So you can see we have a number of time banks across the country. On page 32, you'll see the same thing for the UK. This doesn't even have the SPICE time credit models. They have like 30-something systems that have been deployed now. And then on page 33, you'll see at least instances of Cyclos. And this is the software that we're presently using as our accounting and transacting software, which you can connect to a third-party text service and be able to run transactions through text messages, which has proven very, very convenient, very popular, and not that hard to implement. So very popular. And that's not to say that every single one of these things is a live system, okay? But that's at least somebody who has turned it on and gotten in there and started messing around. So just quickly on Ithacash on page 34, you'll see that we intend to print notes. It also just talks a little bit about, how they're provided into circulation. Our model is different than Baybucks and the zero balance mutual credit model in that I do kind of reserve some discretionary authority to issue units on behalf of the system or to make grants and other kinds of things. And the way that I intend to justify that is by creating a cooperative governance system where the membership and the goods and services they represent validate those choices and agree on how to maintain the money supply over the long term. We're not quite there yet, but then again, as of like tomorrow, we're 6 months old, so cut us some slack, okay? On page 35, you'll see that we've got Ithacash Online. You're looking at a little screenshot of what it looks like when you log in to Cyclos. You got your account information there. It's very easy to find other users, send them funds, and purchase more currency, etc. And text to pay. And the formula that you're seeing there, pay 1234 Center Cafe 250, is the actual formula that you use to send a payment. And then you get receipt text sent to both the payee and the payer. So you can verify that payment has been received on both sides of the point of sale. And on page 36, you'll see this lovely photo from our launch event. This is on August 20th. We revealed the first piece of art that is going to be on our printed Ithaca dollar bills, featuring Elizabeth Beebe, who is the town missionary here, and some lovely art that was provided by this woman with this lovely smile, smiling right above the top left corner of the note there. And then on page 37, this is a screenshot of some new software that we're bringing into service here. We'll probably have this configured and live sometime in the next month. But I want to talk a little bit about this just briefly. I mean, the only thing that remains in our slides here are contact information. But one thing that I want to call attention to, because I think there's some genius in this approach, is that many people, even, what happens is we go over this really steep learning curve to learn how to do these currencies, why they're a good idea, how to design them, the whole 9 yards, right? And then, to the layman, you guys might, have some sense of this. We're like speaking a whole different language here. It's like, what's going on? I'm just so far removed from the day-to-day experience that using a different kind of money seems so foreign and so disconnected from achieving these outcomes that are desirable. And these guys are saying that using this thing can deliver that outcome, but I'm just not quite sure how. So what our partners here figured out is like, wait a second, we don't actually need to get people to understand the currency itself, all right? You don't need everyone to understand why use a complementary currency, all the fantastic reasons why it's good. All you really need is for people to use it, and I'm going to use a very poor analogy here because, it's not like we want people driving more cars, but Tom Greco, who's another, community currency thinker out there, he is fond of saying that you don't need someone to understand the physics of an internal combustion engine before they can drive a car. And if the object is to get them to drive the car, just get them in the driver's seat and show them how. And so this Main Street market that you're looking at here is an example of a marketplace that uses both US dollars and complementary currency in one seamless environment. And so you can see these example listings here. These are all fake, but you list it in cash, and then you say, I can accept up to X% in the complementary currency, in this case, Ithaca dollars. Now, this may seem a little counterintuitive, or it may seem totally obvious, depending on which side you're coming from here, because normally, activists of our type want to avoid being perceived as a discount, or, you know, because we've worked so hard to create our own freaking currency, man. You know, come on, show a little respect. But for the average consumer, they don't care at all about that. All they care about is their bottom line and having as many dollars in their bank account as they can. And that means that they're looking for every opportunity that they can to save money. So if we can create an environment where they can save money, moving things that they don't want, getting things they do, and they're going to make a better world at the same time by being able to use the currency as a mechanism for that, then, hey, we're total heroes, right? And we've made it so easy for them. So I'm really looking forward to moving forward with this marketplace approach rather than having an exclusive, you know, complementary currency as it's kind of existed, where you go and build this, you know, exclusive list of businesses who can participate because they're willing to use a currency. I think that we're going to find that we can achieve a much more rapid adoption rate simply because we're allowing the flexibility of interfacing with the traditional economy at the same time. So I understand that may sound really complicated or just create more questions than answers, but in any case, that's where I am. I'm Scott Morris, and it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Wow, boy, both of you have so much information. I don't think we actually have time for more than one or maybe two very fast questions. So if you have something burning, please press 1 on your keypad. And also you have Scott's and Chong Kee's contact info. So if you want to go in more depth, you can certainly do that. So any burning questions or comments from our participants today? Press 1 on your keypad. And I'm not seeing any, so that's maybe a really good sign that everything went across really clearly. And what I would love is just a very brief closing comment from Chong Kee and then from Scott. So go ahead, and then we'll wind up.
Okay. Thanks, Caroline. You know, a great webinar. The only thing I would say is really to emphasize the point that we can't build a sustainable economy without building also a sustainable and just monetary system. So I urge all of you to learn more about this and to think about how you can create one for your own community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Scott?
I'm just very pleased to have the opportunity to connect more. The transition movement is deeply inspiring, and I think that it has the power to change people's minds and shape their behavior. And so I hope that in the future we can really start to build out a similar sort of network as to what they're doing in the UK, where the complementary currencies are an integral part to the transition movement. The Bristol pound and Brixton pound that I mentioned earlier are both quote-unquote transition currencies. So I'm always happy to engage with people who are curious about this, and I love resource sharing. So just don't hesitate to be in touch, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you very much, both of you. And there are a number of transition efforts that are really engaged with their local alternative currency. So that is going, but I hear you, Scott, more of that. So I look forward to future calls with the both of you and keeping tabs on your unfolding work. And again, just thank you so much for your wealth of information and for sharing